The Party of Freedom and Liberty just voted to ban people from wearing masks out in public for any reason. On Wednesday, the North Carolina Republican majority voted along party lines for a mask ban, which will most certainly impact people with health conditions. Why? It's so police can crack protesters' heads. Now, Buck Newton, who was the one who sponsored the bill, said, quote, "It's about time that the craziness is at least slowed down, if not literally stopped." Now, that craziness he's referring to are students that are protesting against the war in Gaza. Many of them happen to be Jewish students that are protesting against this war and wanting to these colleges, universities, to divest from weapons manufacturers that happen to be supplying Israel with some of their weapons, 2,000-pound bombs, for example, that have been used to flatten neighborhoods in Rafah. So, yeah, why are U.S. universities invested in weapons manufacturers anyway? Good question. So, one of their demands, the students' demands, is to have them divest because they don't want their tuition money to be used to bomb brown kids. Seems reasonable to me, but of course, when you ask Republicans and some Democrats, they flip out. Okay, so now that said, are some of the student protesters, do they wear masks? Yeah. Why? Because you don't want the state to retaliate against them. That seems like a perfectly valid reason for someone to wear a mask during a protest. But it's not the only reason people wear masks. Some of them do wear masks for medical reasons. This bill does not make any exceptions for those people at all. Problematic. House Bill 237 would ban everyone from wearing masks in public, even for medical reasons, if it becomes law. It passed 30-15. Every Republican voted in favor, and every Democrat actually voted opposed to it. In fact, Senator Lisa Grafstein, a Democrat, said it's unconscionable. Senator Natasha Marcus said, "Is it really that you find mass chemo patients that threatening? Something about them makes you really angry? Or is this more likely a desire to score political points with the anti-mask crowd during an election year at the expense of vulnerable people?" Now, I don't think it's either of those things, although, maybe a little bit of the, hey, we can score some points with the anti-mask crowd. In reality, though, it is to crack down on student protests that are against the right-wing government of Israel. That's the real reason, okay? One of the other items to pass the Senate happened to be a bill that would automatically charge 16 and 17-year-olds as adults in many felony cases. So it seems like it's pretty clear that it's targeting young people, specifically left-wing protesters who want to wear masks, who don't want to be identified by law enforcement. Now, that said, hold on, Jeff, it's not just left-wing protesters that wear masks. I mean, right-wing protesters, look, that's a Proud Boy right there. That ain't no Antifa, all right? That's a Proud Boy. All sorts of masks. So would they not be affected by this bill? Well, it turns out, no, they wouldn't be. You had Democratic Senator Jay Shadari proposing to amend the bill that would actually add a provision to ban hate groups like the KKK and Proud Boys from being allowed to wear masks in public. Now, currently, the law allows these groups to petition to wear masks during their demonstration. So this amendment would stop them from being able to do that, and would have required state law enforcement officials to do more to track hate groups. So how did that go? What happened to that amendment? Republican lawmakers immediately 86'd it. Gone. Shot it down. No debate, no explanation. Got to protect our friends in the Proud Boys. But while also going after student protesters. I mean, the meaning behind this bill is very, very clear. targeting left-wing student anti-war protesters while keeping protections in for literal hate groups, as well as making sure that people who are sick have, weakened immune systems and wear a mask, not allowing them to wear those masks to protect themselves and others. This is your freedom and liberty-loving Republican Party, everyone. So now Democrats had raised a lot of objections. Republicans shrugged them off, saying, oh, we trust police officers not to abuse their authority and arrest anyone for wearing a surgical mask out in public. Really? Police abuse their power all the time. Let's be honest. So, yeah, if it comes to it, if somebody looks at them wrong, who happens to be wearing a mask, yeah, they're going to abuse the power, okay? Yes. Now, Newton said on Tuesday that it wasn't intended to prosecute Granny for wearing a mask in Walmart. Well, if that Granny happens to be pro-Palestinian, well then, that might be a little bit different. Several Democrats had also cited concerns that police could use these new anti-mask changes to more easily search or detain people who are trying to go throughout their day. Once again, yes, that is completely plausible in this, police state that we have. Okay, now look, Republicans, they love to talk a big game about freedom, right? They hate freedom. Everything they do flies in the face of freedom. Like, protest a war. Republicans not only want you, police to bash your face in, all right, but also they want you publicly identified so that you can get hate, harassment, also so that, you can have your future absolutely destroyed, where no one will hire you. It is cancel culture on steroids. Remember when Republicans pretended to give a damn about cancel culture? This is cancel. This is cancel culture. Protest a war, protest a country that they pretend to love. In reality, they don't love Israel. They love the right-wing government, and they want Jews to leave the United States. All right? It's super, super anti-Semitic, their support for Israel. And then, in that support, allowing them to do actual war crimes. Okay? Which they do love. They love war crimes against people who are, Muslim, essentially, Arabic. So, but anyway, they're sending a message with this bill. How dare you oppose the state of Israel? How dare you oppose our weapons manufacturers? Now, look, even if you disagree with the student protesters and think Israel did nothing wrong, shouldn't you still believe in their right to peacefully protest? I mean, it should be a fundamental American right. And as I mentioned, peacefully protest, right? So now, in the case of these protests, the vast majority of them have been peaceful. According to an analysis of 553 protests in solidarity with Palestinians between April 18th and May 3rd, 97% of them were peaceful, with no property damage, no serious damage, no damage to people. Okay, the report came from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, or ACLID, and it found less than 20 protests had actually resulted in anything that is serious interpersonal violence or property damage. Okay, the same report also found that in 70 instances, police came in and used force against students. ACLED's analysis of more than 550 campus protests through May 3rd also found 2 instances of property damage that were serious enough to disqualify the demonstrations as peaceful. And this was protesters at Portland State who shattered glass and damaged furniture and computers during their occupation of a campus library, and protesters at Columbia who broke windows during their occupation at a campus building on April 30th. Kieran Doyle, ACLED's North America research manager, said, "We don't consider graffiti or spray paint to be enough property destruction to be indicative of a violent demonstration." So it's kind of giving you the methodology of how they came up with this. And so, yes, they're excluding breaking windows as peaceful protests, right? So there you go. Even with that, 97% of the campus protests peaceful entirely. Now, and by the way, the 3% that had some sort of violence or vandalism isn't exactly on the protesters, the pro-Palestinian protesters themselves. For example, at UCLA, you had Palestinian protesters getting assaulted by a group of masked counter-demonstrators. These are the pro-Israel, right, people who tried to tear down the encampment and assault students with projectiles, fireworks, and chemical agents. This is all while police stood by and allowed that to happen. They also found that nearly half of the 3% of campus protesters that ACLED categorized as violent became so because of demonstrators fighting with the police sent in to clear the protest encampments. So this is half of that. Police. Understand that the Republican Party is not on the side of freedom and liberty. Okay? Unless, of course, you happen to be a racist, and you can protest all day long, and you can wear a mask, whatever you want. You can even assault peaceful protesters. Totally fine. They'll sit there and let you do it. They'll watch. But if you're a left-wing protester, if you're on the side of, peace, if you're against war, if you're against funding these wars, then, well, Republicans, they're going to send the cops after you, all right? Republicans are on the side of state violence and intimidation, even if it's on behalf of a foreign country.